if I go like that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sweet.
We're live.
Are we really? Oh my God, hello there. All right, so welcome to our next wellness workshop. Today we are talking about the ketogenic diet. Who here has heard of that before? Okay, wow, awesome. Hence why you're here. You want to learn more about it. But I see some familiar faces and non-familiar faces in the audience here, and I'm sure Facebook doesn't know me all the time as well. So I'm Dr. Marco Ferrucci, one of the practice owners here, and we do these seminars because we want to educate our patient base and their friends and family about different ways to become healthy. You know, we are chiropractors by trade, so we usually start with spinal posture, but you also have to look at other areas of your life as well. And one of the areas that is important besides spinal health is what we're putting in our body every day. Hence why I like to do evaluations or do conversations about health and wellness in the nutritional world, because what we put in our body is going to affect us every single day. So number one is taking care of the spine always. That's our first and foremost thing that we always recommend to people, is caring for the spine, because the spine is the protector of the most important part of our body, which is our nervous system. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about more nutritional aspect of this. So we're going to talk about the ketogenic diet. Now, personally, for me, the ketogenic diet has changed my life. Hence why I'm willing to come up here and do a presentation about it to all you guys, and hopefully we're going to have millions of people on Facebook seeing this. Who knows? But the ketogenic diet is a very common diet, but it's not very well known, if it makes sense. So people are starting to get an understanding of it now more than ever, but it has been around for many, many years. You know, so the ketogenic diet. So before we start talking about what the ketogenic diet is, we could probably start and talk about what most people eat, right? Because we live in a world that unfortunately doesn't live the most healthiest lifestyle, especially when it comes to the foods that they put in their mouth. So we live in a world, so let's go to this one. We live in a world, we call it the standard American diet, also abbreviated as SAD. So the standard American diet is usually higher in carbohydrates, especially, you know, in the world of diabetes. Like, I personally deal with diabetes in type 1, and there's a lot of people in this world that have diabetes. Believe it or not, they recommend diabetics to have somewhere in the range of 40 to 60% of their diet being from carbohydrates, which is crazy because carbohydrates is what's causing the problem in the first place. But we live in a world that there's a lot of conversation of, well, you have to have carbohydrates because that gives you the fuel that you need to get through the day. And we're going to learn today it's actually not the fuel that's as efficient as another type of fuel that you're going to learn today. So most of our diet tends to be carbohydrates. We live in a world, just think about how we eat. You know, when people get up in the morning and they have breakfast, what do they typically choose to have? Cereal, pancakes, waffles, bagels, all carb-based. You know, then they have lunch and they're having maybe a sandwich. They're having, I mean, sometimes they'll have a salad if they're trying to be healthy, but they're eating a sandwich, they're eating a hamburger, or, you know, a hot dog, or, you know, who knows what it is. A lot of processed and carbohydrates. Then they go to dinner and they might have pasta, or they might have, you know, another type of, you know, carbohydrate loaded meal. So a lot of times a large portion of our day is carbohydrates, and then we forget about the more important things. So in the standard American diet, we usually do more carbohydrates. Then the next thing is we do have fat. The ratio they typically recommend is between 20 and 35% of your diet being fat. And then the last one is protein. They usually recommend about 10 to 35% of your diet to be protein. Now, if you look at these numbers, it's unfortunately the exact opposite of how we should eat. You know, and that's why we live in a world right now where the majority of the population is obese, and the majority of the population is going closer to sickness and disease rather than health and wellness. Would you not agree with that? Mm-hmm. So obviously the big thing that you need to look at is what you're putting in your body every day. Because if you're not putting things that are healthy in your body every day, well, it only makes sense that over a lifetime you're going to develop sickness and disease. But there's not a lot of nutritionists out there, not a lot of doctors that are standing up and teaching a more proper way to eat. So then we talk about the ketogenic diet. Now the ketogenic diet, we say that about 75 to 80% of your diet should be from fat. And that's your good fats. We're going to talk about what some of those fats are. Then 15 to 20% of that should be protein. And you should have a very, very low carbohydrate intake. So you're looking at under 5%. So when you look at that, it totally reverses the opposite of what most people are used to. And some of the things that are being seen when you're on this type of diet, obviously, number one, it tends to do a lot of weight loss for people. So it's a great weight loss style of eating. But even bigger on the weight loss, I mean, there's been studies that have shown that getting on a ketogenic diet is helping people with lowering their diabetes, lowering the glucose levels in their body. It's been seen to show changes for cancer cells. Cancer lives on sugar. I don't know if you know that, but cancer cells, their main fuel is sugar. So if you're having a lot of carbohydrates in the body turns into glucose, which is the same as table sugar. Whether you're picking up a cookie and eating it, or whether you're having a bowl of pasta, all in the body, it still becomes glucose, which is high blood sugar. So if you're giving the body a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, you're basically telling the cancerous cells, I want you to keep eating and surviving and growing. So a lot of times when you starve the body of sugar, well, then you're also starving the cancerous cells of sugar, and those cancerous cells can start to go away and die. So, I mean, am I telling you that this diet is going to cure your cancer? No. But I'm telling you it could definitely help you in the process of recovering from cancer. So it's a lot more than just, hey, I'm overweight, I want to lose weight, can I change my diet? It's a lot more about having your body work more efficiently. So speaking of efficiently, let's talk about the different types of energy that you can receive from your food. So you got to think, a lot of what's taught out there is you think that you need glucose for your energy. So glucose is a source of energy for the body that mainly comes from sugar and high carbohydrates and processed foods. So why would you think if we live in a world that is high in carbohydrate intake, well, wouldn't it make sense that we live in a world that diabetes and cancer is so high? Diabetes and cancer is the top 3 to 4 killers in the United States. So if that's one of the things that is killing us the most, why are we not trying to fight that in a different way than it already has? And that's a huge thing when it comes to this type of eating. So glucose is a source of energy, but it's a very inefficient source of energy. So let's just think of what happens when you have a lot of sugar, when you have a lot of carbohydrates. Your body gets a spike of sugar, so you get that spike of energy, but what happens? You get that roller coaster drop and you dip right below. And what normally happens when that happens, your body does what? Your body wants to get more sugar, right? So what do you usually typically do? You go get the next sugary substance, whether it's coffee, whether it's a snack, whether it's something like that, because you're trying to bring that sugar up. And then you get on this roller coaster of sugar going up and down, and that's usually the first steps towards diabetes. Then if that's not controlled, then all of a sudden we get to a more of a higher level of glucose rather than the dips and drops, and that's how you get more of a diabetic diagnosis. But it starts with these ups and downs of the sugar. So it's a very inefficient way of getting energy. You can get it, like obviously if I'm tired, I could go get something that's higher in sugar and I wake up right away, but it's not efficient enough. So the other source of energy that our body uses is what's called ketones. And ketones is a source of energy that's much more efficient. And that's a source of energy that comes from fats and proteins. So when your body is burning that, mainly fat. So that's why a ketogenic diet, that's where the keto comes from. Ketogenic diet is high in fat because then your body starts to burn that fat as its fuel, and it's a lot more of a leveled energy. So it's like choosing to get regular gas versus, high octane gas. If you have a high performance vehicle, what do they say? They say put the best fuel in it. They don't say go get regular gas. You're not going to have a Lamborghini and go put $20 of regular gas in there. Gas. You want to get the highest octane so that it works the best. Well, why can't we treat our bodies like we treat ourselves like we're Lamborghinis? put the best fuel in our body rather than putting the most inefficient fuel so that your body works better. Doesn't that make sense just in the most basic way of thinking? Then you start just thinking about how do you get to that level, and that's where this ketogenic diet comes from. So it's really more about changing your body from being carb and glucose dependent to more ketone dependent, and that's where you're going to get your source of energy from. Does that make sense? Doesn't it make a lot more sense in the way of, like, I want to be healthier, let me put better fuel in me, let me put better foods, let me get a better source of energy? So when you think of it that way, then there's less backfire from trying to get on the diet, because a lot of people will start asking questions about this diet, and these myths start to come up, and I'm actually going to go through those myths. There's 3 myths that typically are asked or told when you talk about a ketogenic diet. The first thing is that ketosis, which is when your body gets into that ketogenic mode, you get into what's called ketosis, where your body's burning that fuel. They say that ketosis is the same as ketoacidosis, and it's very unhealthy for the body. Well, ketoacidosis is usually seen in diabetics. It's called, it's DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. That is usually due to the body not controlling its blood sugar very well. It doesn't have enough insulin to drop that, and the amount of ketones that are in your body is very high. Whereas when you get into ketosis, your ketone level is high, but not as high as that. So do I have the ratio here? Let me see. Yeah. So when you look at nutritional ketosis, that's when your body goes into that burning of ketones. The blood ketone levels are between 0.5 and 3 millimoles. So you're well below what that ketoacidosis is, which is 12 to 15, almost 10 times the amount. So when people say, isn't it bad to be in that ketosis, they automatically start thinking ketoacidosis, which is dangerous, but it's usually, you don't get to that level because, number one, you get to ketoacidosis by not only having that blood level, but also having high blood sugar. And because you have high blood sugar and the insulin isn't working very well, you have low insulin levels. But if you think about the diet is low in fat, so how could you get high blood sugar? So it's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So a lot of people think that ketoacidosis is the problem, but it's really that it's usually the other things that are coming with that, like high blood sugar, infections, etc. So that's the one thing that a lot of people say, but it's not that as the problem. Ketosis just means that your body is now switching from glucose to ketones as its source of energy. Then the second thing that a lot of people say is, well, if you eat a lot of fat, aren't you going to get a lot of cholesterol? And isn't cholesterol going to clog your arteries and you're going to increase risk of heart disease? Which is not true. Cholesterol is actually a good source of, it's a good part of our body. There's many studies that even link that low carbohydrate diets decrease the risk for heart disease. So you have to think about what cholesterol is. So you got to think cholesterol, number one, is every one of our cells in our body can make cholesterol. So it's actually a good source in our body. It's not something that's bad. But you got to think that cholesterol is a repairer. It repairs damaged tissue in our body. So if you think about heart disease, and you think about things that are causing us to get clogged arteries, the diets that we live on and the lifestyle we live on causes a lot of inflammation in our body. So when you get on the diets that are high in carbohydrates, high in processed foods, etc., it causes a chronic inflammatory process. I went a few seminars ago, we went over the anti-inflammatory diet. But the diets that typically we are on cause a lot of inflammation. When you have a lot of inflammation in the body, not only do you have inflammations in our tissues, but we also have inflammations in our arteries. When you have inflammation in the arteries, it breaks down the arterial wall. Well, guess what the body uses to repair that? Cholesterol. So the reason why you tend to see cholesterol rise when you have an increased risk for heart disease is not because the heart disease is being caused by the high cholesterol. It's because the chronic inflammation is destroying the arterial walls, and the body, who's in a state of always trying to heal yourself, is trying to repair that arterial wall that's getting destroyed. So the bigger picture is the inflammation in the body is the thing you want to get rid of. It's not the cholesterol. But most people think, they automatically hear high cholesterol heart disease. But it's really high cholesterol repairing chronic inflammation, which is a big driver to heart disease. So they miss that middle step. So if you have high cholesterol, it is a marker to say, hey, you probably have some chronic inflammation in the body, so it would be smart to bring down that process, but it's not that the cholesterol is causing the clogged arteries. Does that make sense? Good, I want to go to cholesterol is also a precursor. Yes?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
My recent blood work that I shared with you mentioned that with the high blood pressure to do a low-fat diet, but this, you're saying high-fat.
That's what their recommendations are, and that's the sad part is the most trusted doctors in the world and the most trusted associations in the world are recommending low-fat, low-salt, and higher, carbohydrate and stuff like that diets, which is unfortunately driving the problem. And I'm not saying what they're telling you is wrong. There's just a better way to do it because they're taught a certain way, and they're going to teach that to you that way. So, but getting on a higher fat diet might actually be good for you because then you're going to be removing the carbohydrates and having a more fat diet, and you're going to bring down that inflammation. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of times they do recommend that, but, it would be more efficient to do something like this. Remove all the things that are causing the inflammation in the first place, which are the processed foods, which is the higher carbohydrate foods, etc. I mean, we could go on to a lot more things. But, yeah, they do recommend that, but you're going to learn today, I think there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. Actually, listening to the question and knowing what I know now about blood pressure and food, blood pressure has nothing to do whatsoever with the amounts of types of fats that you put in your body. Whether it be fats from meat, especially good organic meat products, or whether it be fats from vegetable source. The reason why the blood pressure rises has absolutely everything to do with not only carbohydrates and sugar, but with the very, very proteins made from fast food and sugar that causes the plaque within the arteries to harden. It has nothing to do with the fat.
Yeah. No,
That's
the theme.
That's nutritional science.
Yeah.
That's
the
what
theme.
they're not telling you, and that's not what the pharmaceutical companies are promoting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get into it from nutritional science fact, you would realize that what they're telling you is not quite the truth.
Yeah, and not that I want to take this conversation to high blood pressure, but you got to think about high blood pressure. Your blood pressure is controlled by your nervous system. Mm-hmm. The more stress you have in the body, the more you're going to get what's called a stress response. One of the big themes of the stress response is increased blood pressure, increased heart rate. So really you have to look at what's stressing you. And stress comes in a lot of forms. You have physical stress, emotional stress, chemical stress, all different types of stresses. So if you take the route of looking at what is the stress that's causing my body to malfunction and raise my blood pressure, that's really the bigger thing. Nutritional aspect is very important as well.
Right.
But it's not because I'm eating bacon 3 times a week that I'm getting high blood pressure. Yeah. There's a bigger picture. And one aspect of changing is the nutrition. Another aspect is taking stress off the nervous system. Another aspect is working on your emotional health, or their relationships in your life. I mean, I could go on 5 hours about the stress life and how to bring that down and how to help your body, but let's focus on keeping this under the umbrella of ketogenic because that's really our focus today. But great questions, great comments. I mean, I appreciate all the input, but it's really important to understand that fats are not, and another thing about fat is a lot of people think if I eat a lot of fat, I'm going to get fat, but you don't actually get fat from fat. You get fat from storage of sugar in your fat cells. So where are you getting your sugar from? The high carbohydrate diets most people are seeing. So it's really the carbohydrates that are the big issue. And I don't mean, when I say carbohydrate, I mean all carbohydrates, because you have good carbohydrates. There's good and bad carbohydrates. The carbohydrates I'm talking about are the processed foods, the white breads, the pastas, all those type of things. You know, you have good carbohydrates that come from your fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. So don't make it all carbohydrates. We'll talk about the bad carbohydrates and the good carbohydrates. But more people have the bad carbohydrates than they should. Yeah, so that's where that whole obesity thing is coming from. Is there's so much sugar in the body stores it in the fat cells, and then the fat cells grow, and they just keep growing until the body gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So to reverse that, you got to starve the body of the sugar. The body will start burning that sugar because your body does want to use that glucose as energy, but then eventually it's going to get to the point where it doesn't have that glucose for energy, and it looks for the next source, which is going to be ketones. That's why you get a weight loss aspect of this, because your body's going to burn all of that glucose, and then it's going to look for the most efficient source, which is those ketones. So every cell in our body makes cholesterol, so don't use cholesterol as an excuse. It is a precursor for a lot of our hormones, so our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone, our cortisol, all hormones that your body naturally makes. You can't make it without cholesterol. So if you don't have cholesterol in the body, then how the heck are you going to make those important hormones that you need? And then also cholesterol is a very important part of the brain and neurological function. Well, the brain and neurological function is what makes you a human. You either have good brain function or bad brain function, you know, and that is a source that helps to control that. So don't let cholesterol scare you away from the higher fat diet, because that's not the problem. And then we look at, I started to talk about this, they always say that carbohydrates are essential to our health. You know, without carbohydrates, you can't really survive very well. Well, if you use the word essential, it's a very key word in the world of health. Essential, when you look at foods, essential means your body can't make it. You have to get it from an external source. That's what essential foods are. You know what your two essential foods are? Protein and fat. You know what's not essential? Carbohydrates. So now, all of a sudden, they're telling you carbohydrates are essential for your body, yet if you think about the word essential in the world of health, you got to think that essential means you have to get it from another source or outside source because your body doesn't naturally make it. So your body doesn't naturally make proteins and doesn't naturally make proteins. You get that from your external source. Carbohydrates are not essential. Your body can work without that. Not that you don't want none of it, but you don't need as high of amount that you have. So when you restrict the carbohydrates, your body now relies on the fatty acids and ketones for your energy. So that's how the body becomes more efficient. So that's the third thing that typically people say is, so the first thing is they always say that, let's go back to that one, is that ketosis is the same as ketoacidosis, which is not the same. So don't worry about it. You're not going to go into ketoacidosis by getting on a ketogenic diet. Just know that it's not going to happen. And if you want just one reason why, you're not going to have high blood sugar on a ketogenic diet. It's just not really going to happen. So if you need high blood sugar to get into ketoacidosis, well then it's impossible if you're going to be on a low carbohydrate diet. Cholesterol, unsaturated fats are unhealthy. Not true. It's very healthy. In fact, probably a better source of eating than what you're currently doing. And carbohydrates are not essential for good health. They're needed for good health, but they're not essential, meaning you don't need them every day, all day. You got that? So now we threw them out the door. Now we can start to see what's important about it. So let's talk about fat, because everybody hears fat and they wonder where the heck is this fat coming from. So you could get your fat from your oils that you cook with. So some of the top oils that I recommend are avocado oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. In that order. I actually like coconut and olive oil first, and then olive oil last. A lot of people like to go olive oil right away. I like the source of avocado oil and coconut better. It's just there's a lot more research on the importance of it. They use that a lot more. So that's where you could get your fats from oils. Then you also could get your fats from your nuts and seeds. You know, I just gave out some snacks today. Those snacks primarily were nuts and seeds. The highest fat source comes from macadamia nuts. A lot of people don't realize that, but macadamia nuts are one of your highest sources of fat. Walnuts are a high source. Almonds are a high source. Most nuts and seeds tend to be higher in fat. When you go into the peanut category, peanuts are not the best source of fat. or the best source of nuts. So peanuts are one of the lower end that you would want to choose. You would want to choose the other ones first. Not saying they're bad, but it's just not the best one. Then you also are going to get your fats from your meats and your fish. The fattier fishes are your tunas, your swordfish, salmon. Those are your fattier fish. Great for you. I know some people out there don't like fish, but it's a great source of fat for you, and has a lot of omega-3s in it. I mean, fatty acids. There's omega-3, omega-6, and 9 and 3 and 6 are the most common ones talked about. So omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 is inflammatory. Guess what omega-6 is in? Your processed foods and all the foods that most people are eating. And your omega-6 is in the foods that most people are not eating, like your fattier foods, your fish, etc. So you want to have, yep. Did I say 6? I mean, omega-3 is the good anti-inflammatory version. Sorry if I said that wrong. So the best thing is for your body to have a balance of about 1 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. So your diet is going to have some sources of omega-6. It's going to have some sources of omega-3. You want to have that balance. But when you have that diet that we could call the standard American diet, most people are higher in 6, lower in 3, and we get this imbalance where our body's being more inflammatory than anti-inflammatory, and that's how you get those a higher risk for those diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, etc. So that balance is important. Yes?
Let's just get the right understanding. The high protein, low versus the other types of diets. The high protein is exactly where you want to be. But let's not get it twisted. You can eat the best carbohydrates, the ones that burn slow. Mm-hmm. But if you go over a certain line, it's just as bad as eating the bad ones, because your body can only consume so much. What you really, to be successful, what you really have to do is find out what are you consuming per day. Mm-hmm. Okay, because my trainer sitting in front of me, he witnessed this. We used to fight. Man, you can't eat that salmon, Glenn. You can't eat that chicken. Oh man, I do that, man. I do that. I steam it and I buy it from Whole Foods and all of that. And I was a ton, of 180 pounds. Now, what happened was, it's just that what I was consuming was way over the record. Mm-hmm. Like 650 calories a week. That's all OD. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I knocked that down 400. Man, the weight fell off me.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna learn by the end of this talk how to figure out how much calories you need a day, how much fat you need a day, protein and carbs. Hence why I told you guys to take some notes. So I'm happy to get you guys to do it.
I had to see. They said a quarter of a cup of starch. What? That's nothing. I mean, that's not gonna fill me up. Because in the United States, we're so used to that. Your plate gotta be falling over with food, or else you're not eating.
Yeah. So that's gonna be so.
Kill them with more food, and that's processed food.
Yeah.
Give them an overdose of that, and you go home and you go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, we live in a world of moderation. We need to have moderation. So alcohol in small doses is not bad. Alcohol in large doses is deadly. Food in the right doses is good. The food in very high doses is bad. So there's moderation. We gotta live in a world of moderation. So you're absolutely correct. You don't want to have 3,000 calories of carbohydrates a day. That's obviously not what we want to do. So we're going to talk about that very soon. So in the meat and fish category, so a lot of people are afraid to have the meats and the steaks and stuff like that. But on this type of diet, it's one of the best things you can have. So a lot of people think, let's go get the leaner chicken or the leaner steak because it's better for us. But when you go out, you're better off getting the fattier fish and the fattier steak and the fattier meat, because that's going to give you a better source of fuel. So your T-bone steak, your strip steak, your porterhouse, those are the ones that are going to be higher in fat. So those are the ones you're going to get. But a lot of people think, let's go more leaner, so they might get what's a leaner steak? Filet mignon? Is that lean? No, actually that's higher fat. That's leaner. Yeah, filet mignon's a leaner one, although it tastes good. On this style diet, you'd be better off getting a more fattier one. And then obviously avocado is a great source of fat as well. I mean, I get in the habit of trying to either cut up avocado or get it on a salad everywhere I go, because it's one of the best sources of fat. And there's certain, like if you look online, you could find like the breakdown of how much fat, protein, carbs is in certain foods. If you look at this, you'll see avocado, all these things I'm talking about are higher in that fat content, and it's so great for your body.
That's better than the apple a day. I'm an avocado.
I mean, an apple is good in some ways,
Yes,
but also an apple is
avocado is
higher in
better.
sugar, so it's in that
That's
fruit
right.
category. So that's where you're going to get some of your good fats from. So let's talk about how to figure out. So I gave you a lot of information about, the fattier diet and why it's a better source. So now you have the background of understanding that it's more healthy to be higher in fat and protein. And let me back up before I say this. A lot of people hear this diet and they think, oh, isn't this just the Atkins diet? Where it's not. Because if you think about the Atkins diet is high protein and fat and low glucose, or low sugar, I'm sorry. So, but if you think about it, if you look at protein and what protein does to your body, if you have high protein, your body does actually turn protein into sugar. It takes a longer process, but if you have a lot of protein, your body can turn that into sugar, and then you don't get into that ketosis. So you don't want to have too much. That's why it's important to know your ratios, and we're going to go over it right now. You want to be in that 70 to 80% fat and only about 20 to 30% of protein. So if you bring that ratio higher, you're never actually going to get to that ketosis because your body's still going to have that glucose to burn. So it's not Atkins, although a lot of people think it is. So that's one thing I want to mention. But the first thing you always want to do is you want to go to caloriecalculator.net. When you go on that website, there's a thing that you're going to fill out. It asks your age, your weight, what activity level you're in, whether you're high, moderate, or low, and it's going to come up with how many calories per day you should have. It's a rough estimate. It's not like your rule, but it's a rough estimate. And it'll even give you, this is what you need to do to maintain your weight, and then if you want to lose 1 pound a week, you're going to take, I think they take down 500 calories. And then, what happened? Yes?
For everybody in here who has an iPhone, you can go to the App Store. There's an app called Low GI. Low GI. That is a fabulous app. It'll tell you what all different types of food has in it. Well, who knew that cherries, 10 is the right number at one given time and a half? Okay?
Yeah, if you look under the App Store to find that, it's actually what it is the glycemic index on many foods, and especially on processed foods. If you really want to see what you get from processed foods, it's a wonderful application to look at, because you'll learn the differences between good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates, and you'll learn what the effects are in the body plus the glycemic load. And if you want to do the ketogenic diet, it's a good source of having a way to be able to calculate your carbohydrates per day.
Yeah, and there's also a great app called MyFitnessPal.
Yes,
It's another
very,
app.
very good
It's another great app
Very
that you
good.
could track what you're eating, and it'll break down how much
That's
carbs.
a good one.
Yeah, MyFitnessPal is a great
very
one.
good app.
So that's another app as well. But so you want to find out your calories per day, and you want to think: do you want to maintain your weight? Do you want to lose weight? And they give you an option of losing 1 pound a week or 2 pound a week. I wouldn't recommend going any lower than that because a safe weight loss is about 1 to 2 pounds a week. When you're losing tons and tons of weight at once, it's actually not that healthy. So I would pick one of those 3 numbers. So and then you're going to calculate what we call the macros. So your macronutrients are your fat, protein, and carbs. Your micronutrients are your vitamins, minerals, all that stuff. We're just going to calculate the macros. So your fat, protein, and carbs. So if you think about your carbs should be, in a true ketogenic world, it should be under 50 grams per day.
Yes.
It's very hard to get to that, especially if you're so addicted to carbs right now. So I start off people at, let's say, between 50 to 100. Yes?
My problem is I see 50 grams
Yeah.
per day, but what does that look like?
I know. That's what we're gonna get you
Oh,
towards. We're gonna get you
That'll
towards.
help you.
Yeah.
That's why getting that GI app.
Will help you.
It'll help
Well,
I
you.
don't have an
you guys.
iPhone though, that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Well,
Okay.
do you
Well,
have
there's other
Android?
sources.
No,
You
I have a
know-
Windows.
Oh, it's no problem. They also too have a
There's
website.
many
I'll
ways
give
of
it
figuring
to
this
you.
out. I even have a couple charts. If you give me your email, or I have your email, I'll send you some of the charts that I have that break down a lot of the common foods and what fat, protein, and carbs are.
Okay.
So your carbs should be between 50 to 100 grams per day, max 100. Like I would even bring it lower to that 50 range. So that's the range you want to be in. Now you got to think of your energy comes from your what's called calories, your kcalories. So your kcalories are important to know because each food gives you a certain amount of kcalories. So your carbohydrates give you 4 calories for every gram that you eat. So does protein. Gives you 4 calories for every gram that you eat. Guess what? When you go to fat, fat gives you 9 calories per gram. Now you can see why it's more efficient because you get almost double the amount of energy from 1 gram of what you're eating. So now when you look at that, now you could calculate your calories, and we're going to do that in a moment. So in the carb world, you want to be 50 to 100. Please be lower and go closer to that 50 grams. Then for your protein, it goes based on your weight. So your weight in kilograms. So your kilogram weight is basically your entire weight, and you multiply that by 2.2. Wait, let me see if I did that right. Divide that by 2.2. So you take your weight, divide it by 2.2, you're going to get a number that's your kilograms of weight. Now, when you find that kilograms of weight, you should have about 1 gram per kilogram of weight. So between 0.8 and 1 gram. So let's say, I'm going to show you an example after this because I did an example of somebody, how that works. But you get it? So let's say you're 90 kilograms. You should have about no more than 90 grams of protein per day. So that's how they figure that out. And then your fat, you get your fat content or fat amount based on the regular amount of the calories. So let's use an example. So let's say we have a 200-pound person. So you weigh 200 pounds, and your little app thing says you should be about 2,000 calories per day to either maintain your weight or lose it. So now we have 2,000 calories, and you have a person that's 200 pounds. So our first thing is we want you to be between 50 to 100 grams per day of carbs. So you're going to take that number and just multiply it by 4 because you're getting 4 calories. So between 200 and 400 of your calories are coming from your carbs. Does that make sense? Do you guys see how that worked? Did I lose anybody? I want to understand this because this is how you're going to figure out what you need to eat. So your carbohydrates, you should never have more than 200 to 400 calories. And I would say be lower to that 200 calories. So you could see if 200 of your calories and 50 grams are coming from your carbs, it's very low. I mean, most people have 50 calories sometimes or 50 grams in like one meal, let alone in one day. So it's very hard, and this type of diet is challenging, but if you do it, it's going to be rewarding. Then you look at protein. So that person is 200 pounds. We divide that by 2.2, and you get 90 kilograms of body weight. Ironically, I didn't even realize that was the same thing I was doing. So then you're going to take 90 grams, because we're going to do 1 gram per every kilogram of weight that you have. So 90 grams, you multiply that by 4, you're going to get 360. So now you have 368 calories of your day coming from protein. Now the rest of your day should be coming from fat. And the way you do that is you're going to take the remaining amount of your calories and you're going to figure out how many calories is left. So let's say we're going to do the lower amount. Let's say 560 of your calories is coming from fat and protein. Or I'm sorry, carbs and protein. So now you're going to take 2,000 minus 560, and on this example I have 1,270. So you have 1,270 calories. Does that make sense? So now you're going to take that number and you're going to divide it by 9 because you're getting 9 calories for every gram. And that's going to give you 137 grams. That's how you come up with your fat. Did I lose anybody? I want you guys to make sure this is understandable. So now that you have your ratios, so you should have about 137 grams from fat, about 200 from carbs, and about 360 from protein. Now, let's say you're doing 3 meals a day. Divide these by 3. Now it makes it a little easier to swallow because you're not thinking about the whole day. So if you're doing 3 meals a day, that means at your meal, your 3 meals, you should have 45 grams of your meal coming from fat. You should have about 30 of it coming from your protein, and you should have in the 15 to 30 range coming from your carbs. So my rule of thumb, I never eat anything that, I shouldn't say never, but at my meals, like say I'm having a snack or have a meal, I don't allow my body to have more than 15 to 20 grams per meal, because that'll keep me under that 50 grams or close to it. So I look at the carbs, that's my bigger thing. The other things is, you know, when I look at the oils that I cook with, you know, if you look at the back of your oils, when you take a tablespoon of oil, which is pretty much what we cook with, you get sometimes between 25 to 30 grams from that. You know, so avocado oil is my favorite one. So you just put that on your thing, then you're going to add, or your food, then you're going to add your fattier food and stuff like that. You can add in your vegetables, because vegetables, you're going to get your carbohydrates from your vegetables and fruit. You want to keep your fruit low because fruit is higher in glycemic, but you're going to get a lot of your carbohydrates from your vegetables and fruit. Did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, for good oils, I wanted to actually put in grass-fed omega-3 butter.
Okay.
Because of the fact that it actually enhances you, getting rid of any kind of clogged arteries.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it gives you that real good omega-3 from the cows eating grass.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
If you take any kind of grass-fed cow product, that meat is considered 75% leaner and 85% tastier, and it has all of its nutrients because the cow is eating its natural diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
So yeah.
not corn-fed.
So this
cows get fat from just eating grass.
They don't.
No.
they don't. A
They
lot of them
don't.
don't. A lot of them don't have their grass. They're
It's
usually
the
fed.
corn
It's
and
the grain.
The
starch,
corn, yeah.
The grain. Right there, they feed cows in America, unless you
Even
get
before they
grass-fed
fed
that.
cows,
Cows always
cows
ate
are always fat
grass.
from eating grass.
Yeah.
Right. But now they have to feed them corn because it's cheaper.
Yeah,
So
it's-
what the cow ate, you're eating.
It's true. It's pretty interesting, the world that we live in with the food industry, and that's a whole nother conversation we could go to. So, so with this diet, I mean, believe it or not, the things that we've been taught not to eat. So you can have the butters, you can have the fattier things. I mean, there's things that we don't think that we can have that we can.
Yes.
You can have the bacon. My morning that I have eggs and bacon at least 2 or 3 times a week. But we've been taught that, no, don't have that. It's too much cholesterol, too much fat. You're going to get heart disease. Meanwhile, we just taught you that it's actually going to be more efficient for you to be like that, and you're going to have a decrease in inflammation and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to have bacon. They've even gone to the world of let's not have regular bacon. Let's go to
Soy
turkey bacon or something like that. But then again, you're going towards a leaner meat. You're not going to get that fat content. So don't be afraid of that. Am I telling you every single day have bacon throughout the day? No, because moderation is important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that you can't do. So let me just give you an understanding of what my day looks like. So it gives you kind of a picture of where you could go. So my morning, I either have bacon and eggs, or I make a nutritional shake. So my nutritional shake that I choose is Vega 1. You guys can choose whatever you want, but I choose Vega 1. It's a vegan protein, so it's not whey protein. I personally like that over whey protein. And it's got 50% of the vitamins and nutrients you're supposed to have. But in that shake, I also add fruits and vegetables. I add an omega-3 fish oil to it to add more fat. I add to it vitamin D to it. I take with it probiotics. So it's like I beef up my nutritional shake with other things. So I either do a nutritional shake or I do bacon and eggs in the morning. Yes.
I'm a big coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Um,
You're going to love what I'm going to tell you from this, but go ahead.
I think I know where you're going with it. I heard something
Okay.
bizarre. But what's good in it? Skim milk, regular milk, half and half, heavy cream.
I mean, he said butter, but there's actually a company out there. One of them is called Bulletproof.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other ones, but they have created coffee additives that are high in fat. So it's a better source of it. So it's a good flavor and it's got a higher fat. There's also other companies like there's a company called Ketologic and there's a company called Ketoos. And all have higher ketone type supplements that you could put in there. So
Is there like Whole Foods type stores that have all that stuff?
no, Bulletproof. You might have to go online and order from them. But if you just look up Bulletproof coffee or Bulletproof, ketogenic stuff, it should come up. But yeah, that's a great thing, and then you could just use that. So, but whole milk, you know, with fat would probably be better. But you want whole milk to be from like organic sources, because you can get your pasteurized ones, and then that's a whole different ballgame. So you want to get organic whole milk would be probably your best source. But I would look into the bulletproof or the keto, I mean the higher fat sources of coffee additives.
You know, one of the things that you really have to take away from this, what Dr. Marco is doing, Dr. Tim, what they're really trying to explain to you is that in today's medicine and in this country, the people that's in control, the politics and the doctors, they have such a tremendous arrogance towards your body. Tremendous. And you know what? You can say what you want about them, but it's up to you not to let them have control over you like that. And this is why people, they can sell billions of dollars worth of bad meat because nobody looks into it. Or bad vegetables grown on the ground that has GMO on it and stuff like that. Because nobody, the government would never do that.
Well, let me tell you, first and foremost, your health, really, and what you stick in your face, what becomes a part of you, is whose responsibility in the end.
That's right.
You teach yourself to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be dependent upon somebody else telling you, you know, this is best for you without asking questions.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've been trained to be zombies.
I'm glad they're saying this. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is it's your responsibility to choose what you put in your body. You know, yeah, you're going to get advice from 85 different directions. Your mother's going to tell you something. Your one doctor that's holistic is going to tell you something. Your one doctor that's more allopathic is going to tell you another thing. And you've got to gather that information and say, what seems to make the most sense to me, and what is going to help me become the healthier me from this point forward. Because you're going to get 85 different opinions. You're gonna have somebody that responds to my video right now and say, that was a bunch of junk you just said. Why are you teaching that to people? You're gonna hurt them. There's gonna be people that are gonna say that. Everybody has their opinion. So you're gonna literally evaluate the opinion and say, what makes the most sense to me and how am I gonna use it? So let's get back to my day so you guys could continue the picture. We got a little off track. So my breakfast is either bacon and eggs or something like that, or a shake. I like to snack between my meals. Some people will say don't. Some people will say, you know, fast for a little bit because it's good for the body. Personally, for me, I like to snack on like a nut-based snack. So I like Kind bars. Kind bar is a great thing. It's a nut source that's not a lot of processed stuff. I like that. I mean, nuts and seeds. So I might get a mixed nuts, or you know, some almonds or walnuts, stuff like that. So I'll eat that maybe 2 or 3 hours after my breakfast. But then for lunch, I mean, you can have an array of things. I personally like salad. I've always liked salad. My mother always told me a funny story that when I was 5 years old, or in that age range, I always said to her that I won't eat dinner or lunch until I had a salad beforehand. So I naturally, somehow, for some reason, had it in me to eat a little bit healthier, which is ironic. I ended up getting diabetes, but it's a whole nother question. But yeah, so I usually like to go with like a salad with some type of meat on it. You know, so I like to get steak on it, chicken. You could get fish on it, shrimp. You know, whatever shrimp. Yeah, you might want to go with salmon or something like that rather than shrimp. But then you could go to your meat. So you can get, you know, mixed vegetables with a steak. You know, or mixed vegetable with a chicken dish. You know, so our first gut reaction is, let's go look at the sandwiches on the menu. You know, and then, or let's look at the wraps on the menu. Well, then now you're going into the carb category. Why don't you go? It might be a little bit more expensive, but go to the entree section. You know, or the one that doesn't have all the breads and all that stuff. So you can get like your chickens and your fish dishes and your steak dishes, but stay away from the section that says hot sandwiches, cold sandwiches. Even though that's sometimes the best tasting ones, it doesn't mean it's the best source of food for you. So, you know, go on the menu and look under the entrees, and you could pick your chicken and steak dishes, your fish dishes. So that's what I might have for lunch.
Well, I'll let you finish. I have a question.
Sure. And then again, you know, maybe, you know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I might go, you know, grab another handful of nuts or something like that, just to keep my blood sugar balanced. And then for dinner, I'm very easy with my dinner. I usually pick some type of meat or fish and a vegetable. and a salad or a salad. So I might get broccoli. You know, my wife and I will steam up some broccoli or fry up some broccoli. We put some, you know, avocado oil or coconut oil on it. I put some seasoning on it, and that's it, nice and easy. Fry that up, and then I put a steak on the grill, or we make you know, we like swordfish and tuna and stuff like that. So everything that I told you that you can eat is what's in my diet every day. You know, and then I do have one of those, the company's called Ketoacidosis is the one I use. There's a million other ones. I sometimes use that as like, if I don't have time to eat, like I'm on the run, they have like it's not a meal replacement, but it's just something to give you ketones to get you energy through the next meal. I use that sometimes. It's like a quick, like, it's like an energy drink, but it's not bad for you. It's just got, it gives you the amount of ketones you would need in like a 20-minute period. So that's what I like to do as well. Ketoacidosis is the other company that does that as well. But that's like what my day looks like. And I mean, the downside is you're not very, in this diet, you're not very, you're not that you're creative. There's not a lot of different foods you're going to have. You're going to kind of pick your go-to foods, and that's what you're going to have. You know, you're not going to have an array of 50 things that you're going to choose from. You're going to choose from your go-tos. You know, whether that go-to for you is steak or whether that go-to for you is salmon. You know, you're going to kind of go to that on the menu. You're going to look on the menu and see, oh, they have a good salmon dish. Let me check out that. But, you know, but there is ways of making it fun and making it creative. I mean, there's books out there. If you start looking in this, there's books of ketogenic style cookbooks that you can make things from different sources of fat. But yeah, that's how I, you know, structure my day. It's very repetitive. Obviously, on this diet, you want to monitor your blood sugar, you know, especially if you have blood sugar issues, you know, because on this diet, you're going to see changes in your blood sugar. You're going to see if you're somebody that's type 1 diabetic and you need insulin, you're going to see that the need of insulin is going to be lower because your blood sugar is going to be coming lower. So you got to monitor your body during this. You don't just do it and then just let it do what it has to do. You want to monitor to make sure that you're not getting too low. The beginning stages of this diet is, especially for somebody that's been carb dependent for so many years, is not comfortable. You know, it's almost like you're withdrawals come in the first couple weeks. Because believe it or not, there is a addictive component of carbohydrates that actually goes to the same centers in your brain that some of the drugs that people take recreationally go to. So you actually are addicted to a lot of the carbohydrates and glutens that you're having. So you got to be careful with that. So you want to make sure that you're understanding that, and you want to stay hydrated. Hydration is huge. So the thing we use is half your body weight in ounces of water per day. So that same person that weighs 200 pounds should be having at least 100 ounces of water a day. So you take your body weight, cut it in half, that's the ounces per day. Obviously, if you're having more sugary things, you're going to have to increase that. So, yes, so you've been wanting to ask a question.
One food you haven't mentioned, and probably something that's not on the list, cheese.
Cheese. So cheese is a fattier, it does have fat in it, but you want to look at the source of the cheese it's coming from. Mm-hmm. You know, so there is a milk component of that. So you got to watch out. You know, some people will say you don't want to have any type of cow's milk. So you could get cheese sources from non-cow sources. So you could look at that. But
like goat cheese. So.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's other. You know, there's non-dairy.
Actually, at Whole Foods, it's one of the best cheeses you can find.
Question?
It's also to grass-fed.
Okay, give me a second.
Makes the greatest cheddar. Oh, delicious.
Yeah. So cheese. I mean, I would challenge the cheese thing because, you know, then we start going in the world of dairy. There is an inflammatory process that comes from dairy. So you want to just limit that. You know, the three sources of foods you want to limit is your gluten, dairy, soy. Because gluten and dairy is very inflammatory to the body. Sometimes people are very sensitive to that. And testing it is, you know, the best step to find out. And then soy, especially for men, is not good for you. Right. Soy is a phytoestrogen. It increases the estrogen in the body. It causes increases in your risk of cancer and all that stuff like that. So you want to watch gluten, dairy, soy. So in addition to this diet, I also watch the gluten, dairy, soy. And there's a bunch of other supplements that we can add in there. I mean, I could go on for 5 hours about this. I want to respect your time and not be here for that many times, but maybe I can make a second, you know, ketogenic or supplemental, you know, thing. But any other questions?
So no yogurt?
No yogurt. Yogurt's good.
Ooh.
Yogurt's good.
Good.
It's
Yeah.
just you gotta just make sure you're not sensitive to the dairy. That's it. That's the biggest thing.
There's a coconut yogurt. which
Yeah, you
is
could
Yeah,
get-
what I
there's a
use.
coconut
You could get
yogurt.
those sources. You could get
Those are
coconut
good.
milk. You could get coconut yogurt made from coconut milk. You could even get cheese made from coconut milk and stuff like that.
Right,
So
even ice cream.
yeah. So if you
There's a
take your
lot
mind
of
away from
seafood.
cow's milk and start thinking natural sources of milk,
Mhm.
you know, because they joke around. They say we're the only species that drinks another species' milk.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like goats are drinking cow's milk.
Right.
You know, so we're the only species that chose to have cow's milk as our source of dairy and milk, where you can get it from a natural source. You can get it from coconuts, and you could get it from other sources that are natural to the world that we're used to eating.
Right. Almonds.
Yeah, almonds.
Hazelnut.
Vegetables and fruits, is there like limits on that?
Yeah, so vegetables and fruits. So you want, when you're going to go in the fruit world, you're going to listen to what they were saying, the low glycemic fruits. So if you look up the glycemic index, you're going to see an index that has higher and lower glycemic index. You want to choose the fruits that are in the lower glycemic index. Those are going to be your berries. So pretty much every berry is usually good for you. Yeah, berries are good for you, but then you want to look on the other end of like what's high in glycemic, although it's good for you. Bananas are high glucose.
Yeah.
So even though they're good for you, it's a high glycemic index. So you want to just choose the ones that are lower glycemic. And then your vegetables, you want to stick with the green leafy vegetables are my go-to. So your broccolis, your kales, your spinach,
Cauliflower.
cauliflower is a good one. I like what are they called?
Green
I'm
beans.
blanking out on what they're called. The little round ones.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels
Jesus, I
sprouts.
blanked out on that. I eat that a lot. Brussels
One
sprouts.
thing is carrots.
Carrots are
Unless
high
you eat
glycemic.
them, high glycemic if you cook them.
But if you eat them
Low glycemic, which is when they're raw,
raw.
then you can have them.
Okay, that's a good point. I didn't sure if I knew that one. That's a good one.
Cooking sugar concentrates.
Yeah, because you
So
cook
for what
it,
he said, in case
becomes like a
Facebook missed it,
starchy thing.
he said that carrots are high glycemic if they cook them, but if they're raw, they're lower glycemic. So that's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, that's especially since
So,
you eat
yeah.
salads.
Yeah, we got a Facebook question. Awesome.
Is this diet hard on the kidneys?
Is it hard on the kidneys? I haven't personally heard that before. Believe it or not, higher glycemic diets would be higher on the worse on the kidneys because when your body is high in glucose, you know, one of the symptoms in a diabetic episode is that they go to the bathroom a lot. You want to know why? Because your kidneys are filtering out the sugar that your body has. So I don't know for a fact. I haven't done the research, but I would guess that it's less taxing on the kidneys because it doesn't have as much filtration to get out.
Actually, another point, there is actually research on that specifically, and all you have to do is just type it in. There's about 2 or 3 studies that have been done, so you could read that information right off the internet, and it's very, very good. So PubMed is one of them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of research out there. If you go, if you're going to do any research, and I teach this to my students, I teach at university. If you go and research anything, don't go to google.com and research. Go to googlescholar.com. I don't know if it's googlescholar.com, but you're going to go to Google Scholar, and it's the Google search, but it's all research articles. So if you're going to do your research, don't just go, is ketogenic diet bad for the kidneys? Because you know what's going to pop up? The top 5 things of the bad articles that came up. But those are just maybe people that are have a financial dependence on carbohydrates and bad diets. So you got to look at your source of where the information is coming from. So if you're going to do any research, you're going to use Google Scholar, you know, or you could go to other research websites, but that'll pull up all of those types of research. Cool. Yes.
One other thing you're gonna have, and you're gonna have from time to time, a big, a potential blockage, and that's family. Oh, you eat like that now? Oh, come on, you make me sick. Get out of here. I made that myself. How much you gonna eat that?
Peer pressure.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about
Or-
taking responsibility.
You know, one of your children, they bring home their girlfriend or their boyfriend, and oh no, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I don't do that. Oh, what kind of kid is that?
Yeah.
You know,
like I said
you
earlier,
find all kind of problems. And
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, oh God.
yeah, you're gonna have your opinions, and usually people have the strongest opinions about things they don't understand.
Yeah.
Not that they don't believe in, they don't understand it. So because they don't understand it, they automatically think it's not good, and they're gonna give their response on that. So if anybody's gonna get it, you're gonna get advice. Number one, get advice from people that have done the diet, and number two, get advice from people that understand it, and not just it's different from what I know, so it's got to be bad. So that's what you got to be careful for. But yeah, we went over time. I hope everybody's okay. I kind of thought this was going to go over, but like I said, we could talk about this for hours on end. And I'm here to support you. You know, so if you have any other questions, I'll stay afterwards, and you can always email me, and some of the patients here could talk to me. Facebook could reach out to me as well through Facebook or email. So, but I don't want to keep this going. At least respect the time of how long I was supposed to go. And if you have any other questions, I'll stick around. But awesome talk. I appreciate all of your time. I hope there was value to this. I hope it wasn't too much information overload. I am somebody that likes to give information, but I want you guys to feel value out of it and see that you can see that this is going in the right direction for you. But if there's no other further questions right now, then I'm going to wrap this up. Facebook, thank you. You're awesome, and we'll see you next time.